He doesn't handle change.
Good girl, you are such a good girl.
How do you see your child? What's the lens that you're looking through? So for a lot of us, me included, we sometimes, or maybe even all the time, look at our kids through a lens of a label or even a judgment. So I did this. My youngest was a very different child, as they all are, from my first. And so I had to learn a whole new way to be his mum. And I found it a lot more challenging than I had with my first, probably most likely because he was different from me. His temperament was quite different from mine, whereas my first had quite a similar temperament to me. So I found being his mum a lot more difficult than I had the first time around. But what happened was I labelled him difficult. I perceived him as my difficult child, and I would even say things to him like, why do you always have to make things so hard? And what I realized was, through some things that were happening, some behaviors that were happening with him, is that I'd actually created a bit of an internalized identity for him, that he was bad, that he was naughty, and that he was hard work. And so, of course, his behavior was playing out that internalized belief. And this can happen at a really young age. So we're talking about, when he was around 3 years old. So we've got to be careful about our lens of judgment and labels, because what happens when we do this is we kind of color our thinking, we color what we're seeing, and we can sometimes block out other possibilities. So like labeling our child that they don't handle change, we're going to always assume that that's the case no matter the circumstances, even though there might be some circumstances where actually they might surprise us. So my invitation to you is just to notice where you're doing this. And it's going to be hard sometimes to stop, but if you can again bring awareness to this, I talk about awareness all the time, it always is the best place to start to change what you're doing. And so the more you notice it, the more you'll start to, choose a different way to see your child. And the one reason we need to be so careful about these judgments and these labels, how our primary attachment figures perceive us, and then how they reflect that to us, not necessarily just through our language, but through how they interact with us, what our kids hear us say to other people about us. So that really, really determines how we come to understand what is true about ourselves. So this kind of leads on to this whole thing about internalized, unconscious, limiting beliefs, which is a big part of what I work on with parents. We all have them, they're all there. Often they're driving the bus of a lot of things that we do in our lives. So this is one little thing that you can do to hopefully prevent that happening for your kids, and hopefully set them up to, have some really good perceptions of themselves. At the same time, we've got to be careful of positive labels as well. So, naming our children as good girls, good boys can also kind of get in the way of perceiving them how they truly are, because we're not all always good. We're not all always bad. We've all got bits and pieces of all sorts in us that can pop out at any time for any number of reasons. So things like really overusing good girl, good girl, good boy can lead them to develop a perception of themselves that they need to always be that way. Leads to things like people pleasing, perfectionism, lots of things that I'm sure you might be familiar with in your own life. So have a think about that, have a little reflection on maybe what labels you heard as a little person and what labels you're looking through when you interact with your little people in your life. Hope this has been helpful. I'm Caitlin from Childwise. I'd love to hear from you about how this goes, what your thoughts are, or if you're needing any extra support. Hope to see you soon. Bye.